Chinese President Xi Jinping has delivered a fierce rebuke of U.S. global dominance at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Tianjin. He accused Washington of bullying practices and urged a new world order led by China to its allies. Xi unveiled a global governance initiative pledging more than $1.6 billion in support to CSO member states, a move seen as bolstering Beijing's push to rewrite international rules. Now, the summit drew Russian President Vladimir Putin, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and other regional leaders, highlighting growing Chinese-Russia alignment. Xi and Putin presented a united front against Western sanctions, while Modi stressed that India's historic ties with Moscow despite frictions with Washington. The gathering signaled a clear turn by Eurasian powers aiming to challenge the Western-led system and elevate the voice of Global South. Now, joining us to unpack this is Public Affairs Analyst Abraham Great. Thank you for joining us, Abraham Great.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, speaking on this, what exactly is Beijing really trying to achieve with this global governance initiative?
Well, every country is trying to see how to improve their economic stance. Also, bilateral arrangements are always being struck from time immemorial for countries to be able to remember, before we have currency, the way that people traded was what we refer to as trade by barter. In other words, you have something that I need and I have something that you need, and then we exchange it. As the world grows better and economy begins to become more fluent, we have currency. And now that we have all kinds of trade arrangements in place, nations will always have to interact with one another to be able to find common ground, to be able to negotiate the position. In other words, we are still trading by barter in essence. So you will see that some of these things have been done by force to some countries in the past, where Europeans or Americans will invade Africa, or Asians will invade Europe or what have you, to take what is theirs. So every country now have policies in place to have, whatever you want from us, we also need something from you. And that's the reason why you always have these trade summits here and there.
All right, now speaking of the barter, how real and usable is the $1.6 billion pledge?
First, I wouldn't take everything that is going on in America at the moment as extremely what's the right word that I could use for it? Let me put it this way. America under President Donald Trump has what I call lobbyists, not necessarily the country itself lobbying to sign partnership arrangements or lobbying arrangements with people. I give you an example. Under the first term of the President Trump, I had members of that government who I had meetings with in Capitol Hill, who came to visit me at my UK office at the time, traveled to Nigeria, and I took some of them to the vice president of Nigeria at the time. And at the end of the day, what were they trying to sign? They were trying to sign a lobbying arrangement with Nigeria at the time. Particularly, Nigeria has some money that was missing. The former petroleum minister or NNPC minister, had embezzled some money. They claim they know where the money is. I went to the vice president of Nigeria, and there are lobbying arrangements and contracts that we were taking to Nigeria to sign, not related directly to the American government. So when you see things that go on, signing documents, Kenya signed this, that signed that, sometimes you are not necessarily signing with the federal government of the United States of America. Because another point that I'm going to let you know is this. America has a way that has constitutionalized corruption. In Africa, particularly in Nigeria, what we have is institutionalized corruption. So when institutionalized corruption is signing contracts with constitutionalized corruption, what you have is confusion for the media, and people don't understand what is. Most of this arrangement is for private gains.
Okay. Now, but how will this new push, sit alongside the IMF, the World Bank, and also the regional lenders?
Say that again. I didn't hear you clearly.
I was asking how this particular push would, stand alongside the IMF, World Bank, and even regional lenders.
The position of negotiation is always better when you make sure that when you are negotiating on behalf of your country, you really want to be sure that you are not pushing for anything that will affect your current loan with IMF or with the World Bank or your position, because there are organizations that the IMF may not really be entangled to it. And when you begin to lobby or when you begin to trade with them, your integrity as a nation or your credit rating as a nation may be impaired. So there are, for example, adverse lenders or security and diplomacy arrangements that violate the IMF policy. So this is why that when you are working on financial policies or economic policies in your country, it goes beyond the number. It goes beyond what meets the eye. All I's have to be, dotted and the T's have to be crossed, but you have to be also sure that you are not going to put your country in a worse position with IMF and the World Bank. And in some cases, if you know that you have the collateral to back your move, you call their bluff and then you move ahead with what you want to do.
All right. Now, the CSO groups, very different, they're a group of very different countries altogether. So how likely is it that India, Russia, and China can actually agree on concrete projects? Where do you see the biggest flashpoints that could stall cooperation between these countries?
When it comes to China, right now, any country in Africa that is having an arrangement with China, my opinion is that is the way forward. I don't think Russia is the solution because Russia is in negotiation for specific reasons that goes beyond economy. Russia's position at the moment in the current world hula baloo that you call it is to regain world power. Since Russia lost its world power and USSR to the US, there is that enmity. So when Russia is doing something, it's very hard to separate their political agenda from their economic moves. But when you look at what China practices, China has focused, their system of governance does not trade with elections. They're not really fighting any country per se. They just want to grow their economy. So African countries will benefit a lot more, particularly the AGOA, the Organization of Africans. The African community will be better off finding a better way to trade with China than the rest of the world. And we can actually still trade with the US, but what do? The US is increasing tariff on China, having banter with China. Yeah. Africa becomes a corridor for China to pass into America. What do I mean by that? China will sign trade relationships with Nigeria, with Kenya, and that way the goods can move from Nigeria directly into America, because there you have 11%, for example, in the case of Nigeria, tariff. So Chinese companies can actually come and establish in Nigeria or in Kenya, and from there they can ship their goods into America. These are some of the ways that I see that it is of the benefit of Africans to trade with China in these current days.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Abraham Great, for your time and for speaking to us on this.
Thank you.